A very good evening and welcome to this rather very exciting Sunday, the 15th of May, 2016. My name is Charles Mwangushampagi, and tonight we'll be discussing the state of Uganda and trying to examine the place of the politics in the socio-economic transformation of the country that everybody desires. Is it a facilitator or is it a hindrance to that transformation? Different people have different viewpoints about this, and this coming especially after a new government was inaugurated in this country. Well, some people might say the same people, but inaugurated to run this country for the next 5 years under a new mandate. There will be swearing in of members of parliament starting this week, I think starting tomorrow. There will be swearing in of members of parliament, so we'll have a new parliament that will be running affairs of this country. And there have also been developments regarding the main opposition politician, retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, who not only swore himself in what some people have called a mock swearing in as president of the people's president of the government of national unity. He was arrested and banished internally into to Karamoja, where he was later produced in court after court hours and remanded until the 25th of May. We'll be discussing that. To navigate through all that is the question of ideology. What is ideology? Whose ideology? How do you define it? Let me introduce, starting with from my extreme left, Onapito Ekomoloit. He is part of this show. He is a panelist on this show. Ona, always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening.
Thank you. Odrek Rwawogo. Odrek Rwawogo has many titles, but he prefers to be introduced as a farmer and entrepreneur. Yep. Social entrepreneur, I don't know. Social entrepreneur. Odrek Rwawogo is a former journalist, but recently he's been writing a lot on trying to articulate what he thinks is the ideology of the national resistance movement. He made an attempt to contest for the second topmost position within the national resistance movement, but that effort was negotiated and he decided to drop his bid. We'll be understanding why. And I have on my right here, Godba Tumushabe. He's Associate Director at the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies. Godba, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers.
And on a platform, on a social media platform where I am a member and Godba is and Odrek is, they've been engaging in a very intense debate. That social platform is called Diary of Intellectuals, and they engage in very intense...
Where Honor is not.
Honor is not. The administrators need to put Honor on that platform. They engage in very intense debate. Gentlemen, let me start with you, Odrek Rwawogo. You've been trying to write a lot, to articulate a lot. You say you got the villagers and teaching about ideology. What is that ideology you've been trying to teach?
Good, thank you so much. Glad to be here. I was last here when I was running about 6 months ago. And I always find some good reception whenever I come here, even if I feel that you are ideologically opposed to the system that I support. Ideology, just picture a huge oak tree. That oak tree comes from a small seed.
Oak trees growing in Uganda?
Well, let's take Mutuba.
Okay, yeah, because...
Let's take a common tree. It comes from a small seed. That seed, if I just, let me continue with the example of an oak tree. A seed is in a kernel, and that seed is called an acorn. It's very, very small, looks very insignificant. But in that seed, there are ingredients of a huge oak tree that can do 50 meters high, in which birds of air can nest in. But when you look at the seed, you can tell how the tree will be. For me, who studies and understands the movement, from 1900 when we were colonized, there's been an effort. The meaning of the word movement is a spontaneous awakening by a people to liberate themselves politically, socially, and economically, change their mindset, and be able to create a new country. Those efforts, 50 years, zero, after Kabalega and Mwanga were defeated, until Musazi, 1949. This effort is subdued. Obote takes over, and that movement of the common people is destroyed. But you have Kirunda Kivejinja, you have Kintu Musoke, you have Bidandisari, you have all these people who think that you can mobilize people and they really restore their integrity.
I like your picking of people who you think were continuing.
I have John Kakonge, who was in UPC. For me, I'm really very broad. But those people did not have both the decisive factor that eventually turned around the country until they handed over to a younger group of people, the late Kategaya, the late Raito Mongin, President Museveni now, who said a gun has to be the highest form of political debate. You can't have a discussion with Idi Amin. You can't have a discussion with people who absolutely have no idea where the country should go. That movement is what ushered in what we have today. The movement had three principal tenets.
Before you go to the tenets, my question was specific. I'm trying to understand the whole concept of an ideology. And for as long as the movement has existed, the movement as the regime in power today, there's been a lot of debate and a lot of question of whether the movement actually has an ideology, what that ideology is, and whether you can touch it, you can feel it, whether there's some tangibility around what you call an ideology. And let me tell you this. Preparing for this show, I did have discussions with different groups of people. Someone told me, not knowing that I would host you, that what you write are a series of thoughts that you try to articulate as an ideology, but not an ideology.
You know that he hasn't, when you pick one item and you haven't taken the full story, you don't understand the thing. Look, every society, every organization that has changed the situation, whether it's a business or a family, runs around certain collective values. Those collective values, the totality of them is what you say, this is how we see the world.
Okay.
Well, how does the movement see the world?
Yes.
We're founded on very quickly three. I know people talk about Pan-Africanism, and I want to avoid those tonight because we don't have time. First, we were not born in a conference hall. We didn't sit and people say, put Godba as the chairman. No. We were born in the crucible of struggle by a common person. A peasant gave us food. He gave us fighters. He gave us life. He gave us everything until we were credible enough for the elite to accept us. If I just take you back very quickly.
No. I need
September 1983.
You said we don't have a lot of time, so if you could try to be as brief as possible, I need to bring the other gentlemen to bring in their perspectives so that we can be able to...
So our first tenet is that we're a people-based organization.
That's number one.
Now,
second.
But I want to qualify that.
You know, if you could just go over the three...
Are you aware that in September 1983, peasants of of Ngoma and Wachato, not far from here, gathered 21,000 heads of animals and just brought them and they said, these cows, this food, we grow it, but you are the best expression of the struggle
I'm still looking
to
for the
transform our
ideology
country.
Of the NRM.
The second thing is that we're self-reliant. We are the only organization that fought a war and won it using local resources. We are the only organization that looks in the eye of whoever really thinks that we should toe the line and say no. We are able to, I like examples because they really help me. February 1984, the battle for Masindi. We had 700 people attack a barracks. Only 350 were armed. Others were holding sticks. Sticks, they were calling themselves commandos.
The third tenet?
They were able to bring down 60,000 government soldiers with just...
I'm listening to you. The third tenet?
We are broad-based.
Broad-based.
Broad-based means, doesn't mean that we put you in because you're...
So the ideology of the NRM, if I understand you well, is a people-based organization.
These are
that
tenets.
Is self-reliant.
Tenets are different from
what
the
is
principles.
The ideology?
The principles, you know, you didn't, I don't think you picked my Keno understanding. In that seed,
I did.
So let's take the outer shell of
You're using the oak tree in the place of the mustard seed.
I didn't say the mustard seed.
No, I mean, you're using a different example, which fits the...
I think that's what runs in your mind. No. If I take those three, self-reliant...
seed that grows into a huge tree...
Okay, can you just let me explain this? If you take the fact that we are a people-based organization, the values that come out of that is because you see UPE, you see health, you see the things...
We'll come into that.
Okay.
We'll have a
Secondly, when I say we are self-reliant, we build from scratch. We do things because we're supposed to do them, because we have capacity to do them, not because we rely on another person.
Okay, before I go to Honor, I'm afraid I need to bring in Godba, because I have only 15 minutes for every segment of this show, so I need to come to Godba. This whole talk about ideology, what is it?
Now, for me, as far as I'm concerned, I never try to understand ideology. I have beliefs, as Audrey is saying. And when you listen to what Audrey has just said and say, oh, we are a people-based organization, we got so many heads of cattle, you would think that when you saw Dr. Besigye's campaign and, you know, peasants and people across the country bringing him gifts and giving him this, then you would say, this is a people-based organization. But I think that for me, I don't invest so much in worrying about a term called ideology. What I've been arguing is that I want any organization, whether it has ideology or not, the people of this country, there are certain things that they deserve. The children in this country deserve a quality education. I want to see a government, whether it was NRM, whether it's FDC, whether it's UPC, focusing on this is how we deliver quality education to our children. I want to see a mother when he goes to hospital, the hospitals that you and I and the colleagues on the panel may not go to. When that mother goes there, that mother can find the basic provisions that enable her to, you know, to recognize that the dignity of the human person, because there is something that is about dignity of a human person. You can move across this country and look at the facilities that we have. You said they are not dignifying, and I also understand the constraints. Part of the basis of some of my criticism of government, and I can tell you, I would be the way I criticize the government led by NRM, I would probably be worse if the government was being led by UPC and FDC and the way they have been, you know, pushing the NRM regime. If they were doing the same things, I would definitely be raising the same issues, because there are certain things that we must be able to offer our citizens as a country, even within the limits. Even when we cannot afford certain things, we should, our actions should demonstrate that if we had any additional resources, we would actually be doing something and offering better to our people. And I think for me, if you do that, that's where I want to read your ideology. Me, I don't want people to tell me, oh, for us, we are socio-economic transformation and you don't transform, we are democracy and you are not a democracy.
We are center-left, we are right of center.
Absolutely. It doesn't speak to me as a Ugandan, as a citizen. And I have expectations on my government. And so those expectations define how I relate with my government. It actually, I don't think it's even its ideology that defines my relationship with the government. Yeah.
Let me bring in Honor. Honor, you've been a journalist, you've been a politician, you've served the president, now you're in the private sector. This whole labyrinth about the laboring we're doing here to discuss ideology and ideological outlook of a political organization, because ideology is largely tuned towards political organizations.
Not necessarily.
Yes, largely the definition from everybody who has tried to talk ideology has talked about it largely through the lenses of what political thinking wants to deliver.
The last 500 years of
Well,
the West
I
have
think
grown
Charles-
under certain ideas,
Charles-
not necessarily political.
Certainly, I think ideology has its place in politics and maybe even outside politics. But I think the problem is that because of it has been abused, the idea of ideology. I think the best abuse was during the Cold War, when the world was kind of polarized between Marxism, Leninism, capitalism, and socialism. Then the whole ideology thing got convoluted and sort of lost its course. But I believe even in the corporate world where I am right now, things like the vision and the mission of institutions, it sort of still can be like the ideology. So it's right to have that broad outlook of where an institution, where an entity wants to take itself and its followers to achieve what is good for its membership. But unfortunately, it doesn't help anything if it does not go beyond that. You can have a well-stated vision, a well-stated mission, in this case, a well-stated ideology, but it always falls on its face if the implementation does not work. And I'm happy during the swearing in, President Museveni was very clear. He thinks the problem may be for long and maybe more prominent now is really about implementation. He identifies correctly that the public servants are not decisive, and then of course there's corruption. The two are maybe mutually existing. So I totally appreciate when a journalist like myself, a good businessman like Odrek, adventures into this world of ideology. I'm sure it's what guides his company when it delivers that it has what it believes in, and it's perfect. But it may believe in something, but if it doesn't go ahead to do what it will make it realize what it believes in, then the belief will just remain on paper.
Let me just come back to you briefly on this whole question. I like your articulation of a pro-people movement. A pro-people movement means thinking for and for the people.
No, you're born by the people themselves.
The people.
Yes.
Pro-people, pro is for the people, not the people owning you. I would imagine.
We were born, birthed, nurtured, raised by a common person.
For? What was the objective of the people?
The objective of the people definitely is to restore the integrity of the African. Remember, I don't want to take you back many years. What happened to our country? What happened to Africa? This is the only group that says that for you to be a part of this group, you don't have to be Catholic, you don't have to be tribalistic, you don't have to be. You bring the capabilities that you have and you shape your country. You don't have to have education. A lot of our fighters in NRA were not educated people, but they were able to remove educated people who were destroying the country.
Have they been
what
able to
this gentleman is talking about is an expression of an ideology. You can't just lift 23 million kids who are herding goats in the last 20 years, 23 million, put them to school without working out of an ideology that says education is more important than paying salaries, for example, of civil servants. You could also start with building houses for the educated.
You actually could lift those 23 million. I love it when people go to numbers. You could lift those 23 million and appear to be putting them through school or to school because that serves a limited political purpose. If you don't follow it with ensuring that they get a meaningful education.
What is limited?
Just a moment.
What is limited in getting people who are herding goats into school?
You get them to a classroom and they register and you see the numbers.
You're talking about the school dropout,
You don't give them a meaningful education that after 7 years of apparently being in school, they are different from the goat herders you found them.
No.
Number two is that you don't plug the holes that leak them through. By the time they arrive in P7, your 23 million is not there. If you talked about 23 million,
look,
as children who are picked from goat herding, I would imagine 20 years ago, 1997, when universal primary education started. Today you'd be having 23 million children who have gone through a certain level of education. Do you?
Listen, you're confusing the theory and the practice. The fact that we began with UPE means that our biggest challenge was to lift people who didn't see a blackboard and bring them to school. When you bring people massive quantities to school, you can't deal with issues of quality at the same time. It's the same with health. The fact that you have we have a very big school dropout. You speak as if, I know that very well. I've been in schools, I've been in hospitals, I've been in Mulago. I clearly recognize that out of 23, we have had about 10 drop-off for various reasons. There is no enforcement, kids don't have lunch, things like that. But the principle is that you begin with those things that matter to the common person. Would you rather have those kids herding goats? Because for you,
speak to the topic we have
for you to build science capabilities, you have to start with primary
does
school.
Politics in this case facilitate or hinder that what appears to be a good objective in your view?
does politics hinder?
Or facilitate?
Politics does, but for me,
What does it do? Does it hinder or facilitate?
No, it does facilitate. Huh?
It does facilitate.
It does facilitate, but it's not enough. If we politicize UPE, we politicize USE, we are not going to get far. Because to have a child from P1 to P7 requires a parent, requires government, requires the local government, requires all of us to play our role. The fact that we've opened the classrooms and there are many more numbers than the teachers we have doesn't mean that 100% of the role is going to be played by government. We tend to think that government should do...
When does it become convenient for the politics?
Actually,
Yes.
you see, like, if you take the example of education, the biggest problem with education in this country has been government. Because, and in terms of the numbers, I have gone back to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics data, looking at children who enrolled and those who sat for primary 7. The first enrollment in 1997 was about 2.1 million children. Only 485,000 children are reported to have sat primary 7. So that means that over 1.5 million children never reached primary 7. And that figure is almost consistent for the last, we have done now, we've now done like
almost 19 years.
Almost 9 years of the cohorts that have graduated. The cohorts that have graduated. I think the only increase in terms of children sitting for PROE is like in the last about 2 or 3 years, where the number has increased about 600.
Yes.
But
because you have had you've had the dropout rate drop from about 75% to about 68%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So between 1997 to 2009, I think the last cohort that sat for PRE in 2015 is 2009. There are at least 19 million children unaccounted for between P1 and P7. Now, for me...
Yes, how does the politics link into that?
Yeah, so the reason I'm saying government is part of the problem is that government actually articulated a policy where you say, we are taking over the education of children. So even UPE is announced as a gift. So we are taking over, you don't have to worry about the children. So the parents disengage. The teachers do not take their responsibility. Of course, the local governments, I mean, if there is anything that is malfunctional in terms of government institutions in this country, it's the local governments. So they won't help you solve your
Charles,
problem.
I know we shall talk more about the role of government. I just want to get back to ideology. I think for me the problem with arguments about ideology or drag is to assume that in a country like Uganda there are actually different political ideologies. Basically, all these groups identify problems in Uganda the same way. If you listen during the campaigns, all the candidates were saying almost the same thing. I think the crisis we have in this country is how to implement. What I did not hear from the candidates, there was no difference in terms of how services should be delivered. They all believe, for example, that government should be the main engine of delivery, which personally I don't think is going to work. You're a businessman. You know the weakness of the current system of government delivery. If you are given to run, I know you're a dairy farmer. Tell me of any single government dairy farm of the past which is working today. When individuals like you are able to drive dairy farming as private implementers. So I've been arguing on this show that what I want to see in terms of different ideology.
I think you want to see the practice.
It doesn't matter.
I'm afraid
because I think those are just words. I think what people want is the service.
I'm afraid we need to take a quick commercial break. And we need to keep interrogating. Does politics facilitate or hinder the achievement
Certainly
of that?
good politics does that.
Yes, because good politics would announce a UPE not because it would deliver immediate political dividends, but would also follow through with, and wouldn't tell parents that you don't have to do anything, we have lifted the burden off you, it's our responsibility now, if it's going to pay off vote dividends. And I'm afraid we're taking a break. We'll come back to this discussion in a bit. We'll be right back. Welcome back this edition of the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing, does politics facilitate or hinder development? And we're looking at the broader question of ideology and what this is, the state of Uganda today. We just inaugurated a new government the other day. Gentlemen, as we delve into this discussion a little bit deeper, Audrey, I want to come to you. And I want you to assume that I am very naive. I'm actually stupid. I can't understand. and assume
you want
that,
us to say which
yes,
you are.
and assume that a large section of our viewers are very stupid. And help me understand some political conundrum that I can't get my head around. You aspire to build a democratic government that is focused on people and delivering what the people want. The people have agitation and they are not convinced entirely as a larger group, there's no unanimity on which direction the politics should take. You tiptoe into a courtroom, into a chamber of a judge whose judgment and whatever has been doing has been suspect, and secure a one-sided court order. The next day, that court order goes to the heart of fundamental provisions in our constitution. The next day, the minister in charge of information and national guidance, the police, and other government officials go and touch one of the other key fundamentals, freedom of the media, and tell the media, this you can do, this you can't do. Then you have those two have been put out. Then lo and behold, I want to make me understand the thinking that goes, especially as a person who has done a lot of communication consultancy. How then do you decide to arrest a person, banish them in one of the remotest parts of this country? Remote because even the colonialists identified it as the remotest part of the country. Bringing people, transforming those people is the motivation. Because they haven't been transformed, it becomes the most suitable place to keep him. And give the media. This is about Kizabes. And I'm wondering, you talk about service delivery here, talk about the ideology, talk about where you want to go. And I'm thinking, I'm asking myself, how does the line of thought, the consultation process, work to deliver this kind of...
Mangusha, I think you just really, you get a full maize tree and you just pick the tops. How did we get to this? We went through an election. This election was very hotly contested. And you're speaking to someone who was in almost every district in the country, who understands the weaknesses of NRM, even to get in-house engagement in the NRM with its problems. But who would see that whatever conditions exist in the country, the NRM is broader, the NRM is stronger, the NRM won that election. Someone contested the results. He didn't go to court. What did he choose to do?
No, I'm not disputing that.
No.
I'm not going to that.
First of all, you are referring to Karamoja as if it's in Iceland or out of the country.
Actually, Karamojangs wish they were in Iceland.
Well, I can tell you, we have electricity in Moroto now. We have a wonderful road into Moroto and Nakapiripirit. So please don't refer to part of the country as if it's remote. And
you've been involved in activities to promote this country. One day you're telling, through a court process, you're saying, citizens of Uganda cannot do 1, 2, 3 things as per the constitution. The next day you tell the media, you can't do this. Then you gift the same media.
Why don't you let me...
I'm looking for coherence.
Can I contextualize this, since you've really brought messaging into the debate?
Ideology requires some form of coherence, I would imagine.
Ideology requires a sense of discipline.
Discipline, you cannot be disciplined and fail to be coherent. If you fail on coherence, discipline has failed you. Now, I'm thinking, what better gift would you give? How do you undo the things you have attempted to do 2 days before and the next day? And where is that discipline? Where is that coherence in thought?
But, okay, first of all, are you saying that ideology, because we really are people-based, born by the people, we should allow indiscipline, we should allow violence, we should... do you want me to tell you...
I think my question is not clear.
Why Besigye is in Moroto? Why he was taken to Moroto?
Please tell me.
Are you aware that, first of all, we have information that points to the fact that there were groups organized to stone heads of state coming into the country? 2, we had information about 100 women organized to strip naked as soon as the heads of state arrive at Kololo. Are you aware that we have information was circulated around, particularly Kawempe, that if you show up in Kololo, they will poison you.
Heads of state are so old, this stripping might not have any effect.
Now, there has to be, you should not use this forum to really promote indiscipline.
No.
We can have a sane discussion about the future of Uganda.
You said ideology requires discipline.
Hang on. I think you should let people speak, because you really, your questions are long. I want to bring you to just when someone says we will defy whatever stand, whatever laws, whatever is available to keep peace in the country, you don't expect the government to say, yeah, please go ahead and defy. I don't know if you know about a kid in the University of Iowa recently who said, if they don't give me the grades that I require, I will show them the fear of Lugang. Lugang was a Chinese who planted a bomb about 20 years ago in the university. He just posted it on the social media. They took his parents, they banned the kid out of university, they shipped them back to China. Just on posting something about the fear of Lugang. Okay. When someone says, I will defy courts of law,
no, actually,
I will defy the results, I will not respect this. You really want people to step back? What kind of country are you creating?
Honor, you were a journalist, you were an editor, you taught journalists, and now you help an organization, an international organization, market itself, sell itself. If the court order wasn't enough, the banning of the media wasn't enough, how better do you gift your opponent by arresting him, the choice of where you choose to keep him, the time you take him to court, and what comes out of that court? Is there coherence? Can you articulate an idea?
Look, I think for me, I understand the position from which government is acting. First of all, they are not necessarily weighing those options of whether the media will see this as bad, or I think for them, it's doing what they think must be done. As Odrek has said, they wanted to make sure there was going to be no nonsense around the swearing in. And of course, for Besigye had also challenged the government to take him to court and charge him and detain him in a gazetted place, which now happens to be in Moroto. So well, maybe they have done what he wanted.
Him at 4. What difference does it
I think the question of Besigye and the government, to me, there is no winner. I mean, it's almost two wrongs here. I mean, Besigye had his own excesses in terms of how he responded to defeat, however, or stolen victory as he interprets it, and then the government also, I think, allowed this to build up to where it reached. Maybe it could have been diffused much earlier before swearing in, but in my view, there was a bit of mismanagement of the situation.
Yes, good.
No, you see, Charles, I think if we go back to what Odrek described as the principles, the tenets of the movement, you will see the genesis of the crisis that we are in. So the movement is birthed by the people, and the people are supposed to be in charge. So what you see right now is that the movement that Odrek is describing has evolved into an organization. So there is an organization that now is called movement, which is actually in charge. That organization is the one which makes the decisions on how you run an election, who probably contests where, who is the chairman of, who is the electoral commission, and Odrek, I want you to be, to be open on issues like, the electoral commission. That this is a commission that has been contested in terms of its legitimacy, the way it's constituted for almost over a decade now. That movement that organization that is a product of the movement that you described is the one which has said, no, for us, the Electoral Commission is the best thing that has happened in this country.
I don't think they've said that.
I mean the movement. Yes. The movement. You see, I think that when you look through the literature, you talk to different people, Charles, there is general consensus across the board that the Electoral Commission the way it is constituted now, cannot deliver a free and fair election. If you recall, the election, the by-election in Ruwero of
Brendan Abu
Brendan Abu Kenya.
Yes.
After that election, President Museveni wrote a very long missive showing us how elections have been rigged since 1960. Yeah, to the president. So even him, he actually, even this election, he said his votes were stolen. And Ugandans are saying, Mr. President, that group of people that you put in charge and the way it is actually constituted is part of the problem. And he's the only one who cannot.
During the campaigns,
yeah.
all sides were talking about guarding the vote. The thing is money to guard his.
Honor, let me make that point clear in my view. I think that is part of the crisis. The responsibility to guard votes in this country is primarily a responsibility of the police and the Electoral Commission. When I go for elections, I should have trust in the Electoral Commission, in the police. Even if I didn't have agents at the polling station, I should expect that these institutions of state, which where we have people that we pay, are primarily responsible. So the agents really is secondary as far as I'm concerned. So this idea, this argument that you didn't protect your vote. Right now, whether you believe it or not, many Ugandans think that the Electoral Commission and the police are either vote thieves or they aid and abet stealing of votes. Now that situation, you will not change it because that's a perception.
We shouldn't let that stand. Yeah. I think an
Please,
opinion,
you're free to challenge
an
it.
opinion of a section of Ugandans thinks that Electoral Commission lacked credibility. Some of us know that there are technical competences, or should I call them incompetencies, in the Electoral Commission, their use of technology, their deadlines, their time. But that does not take away the fact that the Electoral Commission comes from the very people, the Ugandans like you and me who are there. Even if you replace them with the Mwangusha, I think that they would perform under the circumstances in a similar manner, similar job. My opinion is that two things. The movement that you speak about in terms of evolution, for me, we have a better movement today than we had in 1996 when you last campaigned for the president. Why? Because President Museveni then was chairman of NRC, the parliament. He was also an unelected president. He had a few people from the bush. Today, you have a broad spectrum of dissenting views in the organization. And sometimes I can hardly understand who is who, and in terms of the ideological depth, should I support in the movement? But I like that because they are contending views. So it's a much better situation than when Mr. Muntu and Mr. Besige were still there.
Actually, Audrey, the problem is that...
Secondly...
let me just chip in one quick comment. That we have exactly the same problem because today you can never differentiate between President Museveni as a citizen of Uganda, President Museveni as the chairman of NRM, and President Museveni as the president of Uganda. They are one and the same person.
Can I just give you one example? From around 1991 to 96, the president would simply ask NRC to make some rules, some laws, and they make them. Today he has to get members of parliament into Entebbe and have a discussion with them and convince them. Some things have changed. You really have to, you have to accept that there is growth in terms of... you know, you have Anite.
Is that growth?
Anite, that's not going to quality yet. I have my own concerns in terms of the kind of agreement we have in the movement to shape the future. But I have to recognize where we come from. Do you have that
agreement to shape the future? Does the movement have that agreement to shape the future?
I think, first of all...
I think it's at the core of what we're discussing. All these are strands, are different strands of the broader thing. Does the movement have an ideology? Does that ideology facilitate the transformation of the country, or is it a hindrance?
But that's why, for me, I teach collective values.
Yes. And have you, as a movement, for example, lost your way along the course? Have you lost course along the way?
I think before Drake answers, I think one of the elements in the ideology that you need to investigate and maybe see either to integrate or otherwise is the role, I mean, the political actors' personal interests, furthering interests. What role does it have in the movement as opposed to furthering the interests of society? Is there room for, how do you really strike that delicate balance? Because of course people must enhance themselves as individuals. But where must you draw the line? Because I think one of the biggest dangers to the original ideology of the NRM, the way I have described it, is that struggle between societal interests and personal interests. There is a very thin line that some people will end up being so preoccupied with enhancing themselves, succeeding as individuals, and then not necessarily society succeeding.
Years under the movement,
yeah,
where individual merit made a lot of sense, because we were trying to deal with issues of religion, issues of tribe, issues of state insecurity. Those years, we can even tell the story of the current opposition was all bred under that. That's why it's very difficult, I think, for Mr. Besigye to remove himself from the fact that he can't always be the leader in FDC. There are other contending voices. If there is a disease about individual merit, we see it in certain ways. So for me, I admit
no, it's not so much individual merit. I'm talking of individual interests. Basically, corruption, so to say. I'm trying to say corruption in so many words.
You said, Odrek, at the beginning of the show.
That brings us back to where we began.
Yes, exactly.
If our strength is that we're reliant on people, we're self-reliant, we build a disciplined army, and I forgot to speak about that. A discipline and disciple can't grow from the same Greek root. You can't be one unless you are the other. And we are broad-based. You have Anite, who is 30 years old. You have Moses Ali serving the same government. The people who talk about transition, for me, I see political and economic transition happening. It's just a question of time. If you strike from that strength, it goes without saying that you are going to assimilate many people who don't think like you. You're going to assimilate civil servants whose conviction is, I have to protect my job. You have a lot of people that you gather around who may not think like you, and this is the struggle that for us, our generation is going through. I feel like Uganda is a construction site. Everyone wakes up in the morning, brings sun, brings water, but if you say, what are you building? No one tells whether it's a stadium or it's a house. It is because we don't have...
Is that the same, the absence of articulation of an idea?
Odrek,
that's because we are not
Odrek, the problem,
fundamental values of our organization.
The problem is that when they are bringing those things, they are not actually bringing to build. They are bringing in order to gain something. They are not bothered whether you are building.
We have CID, we have IGG, we have all these places where we are supposed to fight corruption. But corruption still festers because of that lack of collective values about who are we as Ugandans in the first place.
If you're advancing individual interests ahead of societal interests, the question that Ona was putting to you, if you get lost along that way, yes.
No, I just want to. I like the analogy that Odrek uses about building a house. If these people who are bringing bricks and stones and everything have asked Ona to be in charge of this site, and Ona cannot tell them what kind of facility they want to build, or what is the architecture, then I think Ona has a problem.
But let me tell you, you see that Ona who you've chosen, when you choose him to do certain things, suddenly it is the same Ona who you go to, don't touch me because, you know, I did this, but in my tribe I did that.
If you agree,
there are cultural constraints.
If you agreed that when I bring my basin of sand, I will be given a banana, then you have to give me the banana even when I have put you there. If I come and you don't give me my banana and you give Charles, then definitely that will create a problem.
Have you seen bishops pleading for people who are corrupt?
Gentlemen, I'm afraid we need to
because I have to tell you.
We need to take a break. But and I enjoy Odrek's choice of a construction site where people are putting in hands
and
they don't know no clear idea what they're building. And does that go to the heart of this country?
Can I tell you something?
Now, Uganda, as we go through emotions, elections is possibly concrete brought on the site. IGG,
elections is clearing the site, basically.
Elections is supposed to clear the site. IGG, Auditor General, all these anti-corruption agencies are supposed to be the sand.
The police is beating people who have brought the sand.
They are guarding the site.
Mamisha, you've taken me out of context.
No. We have a construction site. We are not clear what we are constructing, when it is supposed to end, how we arrive at total constructing. We'll come back to this.
But to the credit of the one in charge of the site, there is a lot of disturbance from people who are heckling.
There is a lot of apparent activity without articulating what exactly is being done. Let's take a break and come back to this discussion. Welcome back this last segment of the Fourth Estate. And if this show appears like Odrek's construction site, please. I want the viewers to understand.
I'm sure Odrek's site is much more organized than
Absolutely.
Than this show, than Uganda.
A site can be very organized.
But you should let me qualify that, because you have really put words in my mouth.
It's an interesting analogy.
Qualifying, because someone has a question for you here.
Look, when you put 3.4 trillion shillings in infrastructure, you put 2.1 trillion shillings in education, you should really know that infrastructure is connected to kids going through the 7 years of schooling. I didn't even have time to respond to Godbar's question about some of those people who you don't see on the radar. They've repeated classes.
No,
some of them are too young. There are all sorts of problems, but let's not go there. When you put electricity somewhere, it should be connected to some productivity in a village. In other words, the left hand should speak with the right hand. Now, if we go and seek a mandate from the population, and they bring us back with a wide margin, and we come and hand over that mandate to civil servants who have no time limit on when a road should be constructed, on how it should be procured, that's what I meant. You have
So what's the problem? What's the problem? Because that's a symptom. What's the problem?
I think we've grown. When a system has been there for some time, it requires some fresh thinking. For example, we've talked about creating jobs for young people. Do you know we have enough money in this country to be able to create jobs for young people? Yeah. But we shouldn't even start with money, because we throw money at every problem before we think through what should be done.
Does that go back to the topic we started discussing?
That's why I said...
Does politics facilitate or hinder development?
Can I tell you something?
Transformation.
South Korea grew because there was an existential threat from North Korea. You don't fix this, Kim Il-sung will come after you. You don't have resources, you don't have anything. So they had to adopt a collective way of thinking that says it doesn't matter who is in government, we are South Koreans and we want no more poverty and we want to build a strong country. We don't have it here.
Why don't we have it?
The ex-NRM wing called FDC has no alternative on how you raise more capital for development.
Let's focus on the NRM.
The NRM people think that by holding on to this, without improving it, we are going somewhere.
The ex-NRM system called the NRM organization. Does have an idea how to fix this? And let me read for you something from Wafula Goto. Wafula Goto is the leader of opposition in parliament, and he says, ideology determines how we share out or allocate national resources. Is there equity? Who is the focus of development? Is it the few or the majority? How is political power shared out? Who has more of it?
WAF. I should tell WAF that you should first create it before you share it. For me, I think that we've just begun removing supply bottlenecks by huge infrastructure projects we are making. I think that the numbers after 1986 were now around 25, 26 million kids born in the movement. The challenges are different. If you ask me my genuine answer about the future of this country, I think that we've seen the best of the people from the bush, whether it's Muntu, Besigye,
Museveni.
The President Museveni has been a good leader of the pack. But time has come to begin to think about the new planks we got to put to cross the river and create wealth and find ways of raising revenue. We are now taxing and spending. We don't know that we have 2.6 trillion lying in treasury bills from NSSF, which you could put in a private venture capital fund to create jobs for young people. These are thoughts that should be discussed genuinely. Remove blue, yellow. We need to focus on the country.
But
the NRM still has substantial muscle and strength and spread across the country to define the debate.
I don't know if you're still able to articulate this ideological thinking. Let me read a message from one of our viewers who says, Why should any right-minded parent hand over their children's school responsibility to government? That is negligence and wanting free donations. With UPE or not, every parent should bear their heavy or light weight of the children. If government offers anything, well and good. If not, you still send your child to school. Maybe you'll speak to that. And Ismail Ladu here says, kindly tell Bwana Odrek that ideology means something to people who can afford to take their children abroad for medical attention using government resources, and the majority whose total budget for a day is less than $2 a day do not understand the ideology he's talking about. That's Ladu. Let me come back to Honor Peter first. The place of politics and our recent politics, the politics of Besigye, whether he's swearing himself in or whether he is being banished to Karamoja, the politics of Museveni, whether he's taking oath in Kololo and how he treats his opponents, the politics of, does that facilitate this transformation? Are we lost at that?
Well, Charles, I think we are all reminded that man is a political animal. So generally, we can't run away from politics. But I think the problem is that that animal must also be productive. But if politics becomes an end in itself, it's a problem. Obviously, there's too much politics in this country in the sense that, first of all, I think Odrek knows better the structure of the political system from LC1 up to the president is so massive, and increasingly it's getting remunerated. I think there has been an effort to move to pay from LC1, and unfortunately it's not a very productive structure. So a lot of people are looking at politics as a job, which is fine, but I mean, it must be a job that is produced. No, wait. It's fine to look at it as a job, but that job must produce the money to pay you. But if you are holding a job which is not even producing what's enough to pay your salary, then it's a parasitic job. So I think that's where the politics is becoming a disruption, and that's why there's this life and death pushing. There's a lot of desperation on both sides. Those who have one to hold, those who don't have one to get it. And certainly the politics is becoming a drawback in this country.
Okay,
the way it is being handled.
Justin at Makerere University says, so what is the NRM ideology? How is the government planning to cover the trade deficit of over US $164 million? I have an interesting message here coming through which I need to pick. Someone says, ask about succession. I'm eager to hear what Odrek Lobogo says about the question of succession. I think he talked about that in a way.
Is that person suggesting that Odrek is in the queue? Is that fair?
But can we?
Can I ask this question to you, Godba? Then we'll answer it as we move on from one of our viewers. I don't know if I should mention the name. So when I read the message and you want me to mention your name, please send me a message and tell me whether it's okay for me to mention your name. Patriotism and ideology, which comes first? How do leaders empower an individual or community to appreciate these ideas as a benchmark to move forward?
No, for
I'll mention the name when I get a message from the viewer who has sent it.
Unlike many people, I think patriotism is a product of a system. What my country offers me will determine whether I am patriotic or not.
Really?
Yes.
No, that's no.
I thought someone said, don't ask what your country can do for you, or what you can do for your country.
No, let me tell you. You see, that is, and I agree that we have to do things for our country, and I do quite a lot, I think, in my small way. But you see, when I compare my experience living in the US and living here, in my country, you feel like in this country, everything is almost organized to make you fail. Oh. So, yes, let me tell you, this is a personal experience that you'll go to an institution where you expect a service.
Now,
it's frustrating, but it's not organized.
The person who sent this message, this message, if I could just give a little bit more hint about him, because I don't have his authority to mention, to use his name or not. We had a discussion this morning. He's a medical professional, very senior medical professional. And we're arguing about whether as a country, as a people, we are sometimes too negative about our country, about ourselves. Whether that...
Can I help you answer this
impairs-
question? Because you are really
Yes.
asking, Godba told you that he doesn't have any ideology. He doesn't subscribe to certain
I mean,
structured
let me
Let me
thinking.
read the message again.
You are free to
No,
misunderstand
I think
me, but
I had it.
Let me read the message
explained
again.
what ideology means to
Patriotism
me.
and ideology.
Not saying that I don't have ideology.
I need a very
think
clear
that's-
answer.
yeah.
Patriotism and ideology, which comes first? How do leaders empower an individual or community to appreciate these ideas as a benchmark to move forward?
I called ideology the founding things, the founding seed that everything comes out of. Patriotism, and I'm glad that this comes from a medical doctor. He knows
Yes.
something called neutrophils. When you are attacked or there is a bruise, the first white blood cells that go to your defense are called neutrophils. Patriotism is not people holding guns or fighting the war, important that as is. It's the person who makes sure that their child goes to school. My father didn't have any education, but he ensured that I would go with one shirt for 1 month, but I go on a full stomach. He grew the food. If you have 50,000 fathers like that, you don't have kids begging for food. That's patriotism. You don't have to be a minister in a car with a flag to be patriotic, to do things for your country. Patriotism is not taught, it is lived. I take responsibility when I'm in an office, when I'm passing judgment, whatever I'm doing, that's what really patriotism is about. And the NRM says that if you, simple decisions of life, ensuring that you are on the market. You are not begging, you are selling something on the market. If they have put a road and electricity, take something to the market. It starts in our homes.
I'll ask a question related to that.
So
to
what,
Audrey.
what Odrick is saying that the money that NRM has been putting in patriotism clubs is ill-advised.
So,
It's
you see,
misconceived.
for me, the starting point that you have to teach me to love my country is not a good beginning.
And I agree, but you tell us.
I think everyone agrees
Yeah,
with
I
that.
agree. So, but the point you've just made.
So I think
so-
one of the
Yeah.
problems
Let me
in
just
terms
read out the
of
message.
patriotism.
Gentlemen, let me
Okay.
read out a message from one of our viewers. Jose Nwabine, I think he's in Kabula, Liantonde. He says, Odrek, isn't an ideology supposed to be time-bound? So that if the people don't reap from it,
How sad.
you either shelve it. Wait.
Yeah.
You either shelve it for another one or modify it. Must an ideology stretch from one generation to another, or every generation should define its own ideology depending on its challenges?
The Americans believe that they should dominate the world, that they should spread their values, they should use Hollywood, they should sell their cultural products because the American values are the best. Now, are you going to say that a time comes when Americans will feel that they are not the best in the world? We believe in the movement that when we are self-reliant, when we do the things that matter, when we build infrastructure, when we take kids to school, it's a starting point. I don't know what, you don't have time. You
Yes,
know a man called Frederick the Great who built Prussia, 1740? He's the guy who began UPE in Prussia. That's what spurred Germany to start the First and Second World War, because there was substantial number of engineers and banks created by UPE, which we now denigrate and say it's nothing.
Let's go back to the crux of this.
You can't do this unless you really
we
straight
started
from
by
somewhere.
talking about, I'll take a message from Moses
But Charles,
Biarhanga first.
I wanted
Just
to
a moment.
put my
I'll take a
view
most-
about the patriotism.
I'll take a message from Moses Biarhanga first before you come in. He says, Godba should know that while the Electoral Commission and state, through the police, have responsibility to protect votes, the candidate too has a responsibility to protect their votes, and that's why candidates are entitled to 2 agents per polling station. Each agent gets the DR form to take to his candidate. Basically, who claims that his votes
They
were
have
stolen
DR forms, they have
has
never showed
nothing
anybody.
to show what he obtained. He should stop disturbing the population. Okay,
Charles,
please to come in.
no, my take on patriotism, I think where I don't know whether to say the government has failed or the country has failed. I have not had emphasis on citizen responsibility. This whole idea of patriotism is to take it like religion, to say because there are 10 commandments and we go to church so people will not sin. So to tell people to be patriotic is good enough. It's not good enough. It's good but not good.
It's a
I
priest on
think
Sunday or an imam saying the message.
our people, poor as they are in many parts of the country, still have the energy, and collectively they can actually do a lot through self-reliance. Even if government is doing something, it is important for citizens to be responsible.
Okay,
And that must be not just preached. It must actually be enforced.
We need to be bringing this
That
discussion.
citizens need to be
Yes,
responsible.
we need to be bringing this discussion to an end. I've been warned that our time is out, but I have a few questions for Audrey specifically. What's your view on the question of succession? You just talked about the time for those people to move on so that you put new planks.
Quickly, two levels. You really confuse us when you put succession around a personality. I hate it. I just see that Ugandans have really cheap politics. Succession is political. How many people do you bring into decision making? Young, old, women, disabled. I told you that the NRM that he campaigned for 15, 20 years ago is much better now, because we now can have,
So
yes,
there-
we have
there
a
has
real
been
contestation. We have a real contestation.
I listen to people in the NRM, and hardly any one of them wants to discuss the NRM primaries.
Yes.
They say that was not democracy.
Let me tell you, for me, to have Justin Lumumba or Richard Todwong, people yesterday making decisions on behalf of that organization, even in that means that we are bringing in more people in terms of politics. So therefore, we have room to make decisions. Second, and most importantly,
most of us believed he should have gone ahead and become all lost as vice chairman. So now you are shooting yourself in the foot by saying that the succession, when you are denied the opportunity.
Ona is interrupting my time.
No,
I did not negotiate my way out.
Yes.
The NRM has weaknesses. You know, an inflammation is not an infection. An inflammation means that you have a swelling, but that doesn't mean that you have an infection. We have inflammation in NRM.
What inflames you?
Let me tell you something. If you have Matayo Charigonza, who thinks that outside the NRM he can't survive, right? And he blackmails to. Now you're really forcing me to talk about my elders.
No.
Should
This
Audrey
is
act
the
the
honest
same? Shouldn't
discussion.
he? Because for me, politics is based on purpose. I'm a farmer. I'm an industrialist. I came in because I want sort of issues of export, issues of farmers. I didn't come in because I want a position. But someone misunderstood it.
Audrey,
So now I said I
would appreciate your difficulty to discuss succession and talk about dislodging Matayo Charigonza without having the further discussion to discussing Matayo Charigonza commander in the struggle.
No, but
that brought the NRM to power.
no, I think you didn't hear me very well.
No,
I
did,
said the generation of the bush.
I have been
They've
listening.
done wonderful work,
Yes.
right?
But it's time for them.
It's time to
put
expand
planks.
the base.
Yes.
But there's something I must conclude with, because you really put me in politics and I don't like it.
Yes.
The biggest form of succession is economic. When you bring many more people into an opportunity by giving them education, by building infrastructure, by starting businesses. I have a problem with taxes on startups for young people, because every nation that has grown has supported startups. If you provide an economic opportunity, that's the best form of succession.
Thank you.
Not
Thank
President
you,
Museveni alone. We must get to
question
know this
also
debate
is, I
from
don't know
him.
which statistics you look at, because you looked at statistics of 23 million children being accessed an opportunity to get into a classroom. You call them goat herders, getting an opportunity to get into the classroom, but your statistics conveniently avoid those who fall through the cracks or how they perform in school. You bring in statistics of transforming people economically, but you don't look at the numbers of poverty in this country. Even at an increased, just a moment.
You don't have time, and I'm going to really
even at an increased rate of $2 per day. Even if you put it at kept it at $1 per day, those statistics you don't want to look at. That a larger portion of this country's population, young as it is, has no jobs. And
did you hear me when I said that when you bring massive numbers into school or even health, you have problems maintaining quality at the same time? Have you heard? You see, you focus on negativity. This is the challenge with the media, really. Are you aware that between Deje and Makerere University, we have research going on, testing an ant, the ants which we have all over Uganda, to produce something called a monopolysaccharide, which has a stronger ingredient than the stuff we are using on making roads. We will be getting something from, this is research. This research, you don't know it because you are focusing on UPE.
No, you have
there's
an
technology
to give that advice, but why it doesn't work, I don't know.
Let me tell you something. We have a lot of changes that have happened in our country.
But Charles, before we go,
our time is out.
I thought you wanted us to comment on the succession issue.
Yes.
For me, really, I'm also increasingly sort of believing that this succession it's a good feel effect. Kind of people may feel good if there was there was another president other than Museveni, which would be fine. But I think this country should reflect on the failure of across society, even where there is no Museveni. So even as we look forward to Museveni being succeeded, his succession must not necessarily be just in terms of another person, because we shall still
That's
be
what
crying.
we're looking for.
Good, but you can have your.
I think the
30
society
seconds.
needs to reflect and
But
say,
30
we
seconds.
really
I read
want
one
to-
message and we'll get out of here.
I can tell you that every system where a system like the Ugandan one, where it has really gotten log jammed, the corruption, the inefficiency, the incompetence that even the president talks about in the public service, unless you actually change leadership, and that leadership will be from the top to bottom up. And the challenge we have as a country is that President Museveni now in his position has no capacity to actually change anything. So you can expect another 5 years of the same. And 5 years later, we can be here
But are
discussing
there
and we'll be
millions
talking
of
about
us
the
who
subject.
voted him?
Yeah.
Let
think
me
we're
take
just
let me
sitting,
take
we're
what
also
should be
making
our
a
last
decision.
message.
I mean, people have
Let
voted
me take-
him every 5 years.
Let me
and,
take what should be our last message for tonight's show. Someone says, Charles, government should cease to tell Ugandans that it offers free this, free that, when it is the very Ugandans that pay governments to offer those services. So, how free is it? Sijui, free education, free roads, free UPE, free
Yeah.
USE. Today,
yeah. And we have
to the
collapse.
extent of telling parents, just produce and I'll educate them for you, that spoils people from working and causes laziness. Just what Honor has said, quality is a must that should go along quantity. Thanks. Yeah, when government doesn't produce its own resources, or the people on the
I
government,
don't like cynical people. I think you got to understand that we were collecting a tenth in terms of revenue some many years back. Now we are able to fund our own education. Is he aware that of the 1.2 trillion we put in UPE, 900 billion goes to teachers' salaries? Is he aware that we had 12,000 teachers, now we have
It's not doing a
180,000?
favor to the people who are receiving that. Really.
Is it a
Well,
favor?
your government is not doing a favor to the teachers to pay
So
them
how-
to teach.
No. But
No, it's not.
what role do citizens play
and government is
when
not
they elect a government to serve them for the next 5 years?
Government
Shouldn't it
doesn't-
talk about what it has
It should
done?
talk about it, but
Is
government
it a crime
doesn't
to
do.
say that we've lifted so many numbers into
Audrey,
education?
government doesn't do me a favor when it builds a road on which I should move when I have paid for that road. Government is only a servant I have put in place.
It's like you have to be eternally grateful because
Yes,
government
listen,
has built their road.
eternal gratitude.
You know, in the media,
Gentlemen, our time is up.
the truth has to be given feet to walk. They have to tell you that the road is there because you'll say it's not.
Our time is up. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for making time for the show. And that discussion I had with the medical doctor earlier in the day still running in my head. But
Yeah.
we'll need more time to discuss and
Please tell
internalize
the
some of these
doctor
things.
I want to have a discussion with him.
Yes, have a discussion.
I came with my books, the teaching I do across the country, some DVDs. I will just hand them over to you, give them to the doctor.
I'd love to sit in your class. Our time is up. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And gentlemen, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Have a good night to our viewers.
Thank you.
Good.